Coming into NRL Fantasy Round 12, we had a lot of drama. So Jacob Kraz out for an extended period, Rob Toya selected for Origin, Max King in the Origin picture, a bunch of other players here too. And it felt like we were going to get a bit more sort of chaos during this week. And what we saw, just to start off this recap, is a week that kind of fizzled out, right? Like most of the main captain options scored between a 45 and maybe a 61. Like it was very safe in terms of captains. Not a lot of volatility there. Some high owned players popped off. So Dylan Lucas, Fletcher Sharp, but really amongst the most owned players, it was a pretty mediocre little week, right? So me personally, I faded back in the ranks a little bit with 13 players, just a small drop there, just outside the top 1,000. But bit of a fizzler of a week, I'm going to say. Now, we'll go through here, and if you did have a big rise this week, congratulations. You might have gotten on one of the big pods that we talked about this week. But yeah, it was an interesting one. We'll run through them, and we'll sort of look forward to next week too. Now, Jackson Ford tops list here, 73 points. He can go and do that every now and then. 200 meters, 43 tackles, 5 tackle breaks. Like, I know when he gets the minutes, it's useful, but I think when they get Fisher Harris and Barnett back next week, most likely, maybe the week after, that's going to fade away there. Jamal Fogarty had the nice breakaway try, so that was definitely a boost to the score. It would have been about a plus 15 to his score. Before that, it was looking more like a 48, but yeah, that try on becomes a 63. Fogarty, safe as houses, very reliable. Keep rolling with him. Aaron Clark, a bit of a dip in the minutes this week. So this is a reasonable stat line, though. You got the PPM there, 61 and 63. Take that every day. No negative stats at all. I got 37 tackles, 1 tackle break, 1 offload, 1 turnover, and about 150 meters run. So again, if you're a Clark owner, you roll with this. And I think we talked about it a bit during this week. He played a few less minutes because it was a bit of a tougher game for Aaron Clark, right? So they're missing those big front row forwards, and Clark had to take a lot of those tough runs. And to his credit, he absolutely stepped up. But I think we could see when they're at full strength, he starts cracking onto more of those tackle breaks, those offloads, maybe a few more minutes here and there as well. So if you're a Clark owner, keep riding the wave. He's absolutely killing it. But 61, kind of mid, right? A lot of that sort of 50 to 60 scoring this week. Morgan Smithies, though, I will shout out here, 477K. He was one of our favorite pods for this week, and that 60 points in 61 minutes is exactly what you buy him for. The PPM increase is what we talked about this week. So last year it was a 0.7. This year it's a 0.9. This is about a 0.998, so it's a much higher PPM there, but that try saver definitely boosted his score. So if you got Smithies, enjoy the ride. If you don't have Smithies, I wouldn't buy him now because they have the buy in round 15. Same with Joey Tarpanay. Solid game from him. Lower PPM than previous weeks, but 57, you'll take that every day and just keep on rolling. Then down the list here, Metcalf with a 50, RTS solid. Simi Sasangi, a 45-point game in 80 minutes there. So that's pretty good. It's better than Zach Hosking, we'll get to in a sec. Corey Horsburgh got himself sin binned in this one, and that -7 for the sin bin and penalty is what held him off from a 50-point game. Played 53 minutes. He scored the 43 points. The PPM was roughly the same as usual. You can sell him soon if you want to. He's sort of like that borderline level keeper. I'll try to hold him as long as he's not suspended. I know him and Tarpanay both have some things that are going to be looked at for the match review committee. But if he's still in, I'll probably try to hold Horsburgh in my team. Then Capewell, Starling. I mean, Starling's one who was on one for a bit there. Got himself sin binned right at the end as well. So that's a -7 for him. It was looking like a 50-point game and sort of faded back to that 40 there. Then Seb Chris, Wade Egan really quiet. That's a 38-point game in 43 tackles, right? So you expect a bit more from him. Hosking didn't play the full 80 minutes. Did look a little bit bothered by something. So keep an eye out for him in terms of injury reports. But for this game, 76 meters run, 34 tackles. You got the 1 tackle break there. 2 missed tackles, 1 error, 2 penalties. So bit of a horror show for Hosking with that 37. Hoping he can sort of break out. And one thing that is worrying me a bit with Hosking is we saw Matty Nicholson receiving a lot of those, very positive short balls close to the line and being given those try scoring opportunities. And I feel like Hosking isn't getting as many of those. And the ones he does get are feeling a bit clunky. So I'm not sure if it's on him or it's a strategy there from Canberra, but he gets a very different role to what Nicholson does. And I feel like he's not getting as much that positive front foot attacking ball as Nicholson was, and doesn't play that 80 minutes either. So I'm a bit worried about Hosking. I think, look, we bought him, right? He's pretty cheap. We're going to do okay with him, but I'm starting to think that he's not really going to sort of break out and be that top tier guy we were hoping for. So my projection for Hosking drops down to about a 50 average now, which, if you don't have him, I wouldn't rush to get him at this stage. But if you do have him, you ride the wave, enjoy the scores. You'll have breakout games. He's going to have some big ones as well. It wasn't very encouraging this game. Then CNK, Tamale. Tamale is a funny one. Like he has to go and find the ball. He had made this big line break in this game off a kick return, had 10 tackle breaks, 200 meters run, but just doesn't receive any sort of attacking ball. Like it's so frustrating as a Tamale owner because you see him, he'll run back and like pick up a scrappy ball that's behind the play and then break 3 tackles and sort of make half a break. You think, oh man, if they just fed him a bit of ball and attack, he'd be unstoppable. But with Tamale, I think it's probably time to look at selling him. So as much as I love 200 meters, I love 10 tackle breaks. I'll be thinking about it this week. I'll be thinking about it. He's sort of at that 516K coming to this week. He's at a price point where we can think about selling him. As long as you have a full 17 this week or full 13. Sorry, it's an easier round this week as well. But as long as you have that full team this week, you think about selling Tamale. Halasima, this is one I was a bit concerned about last week, and we saw Capewell go back into the forward pack, and we saw some changes there, the rotations. It meant Halasima played 64 minutes, scored a 36. So that sort of tracks in terms of PPM there. But yeah, 3 errors, 3 missed tackles, a penalty as well. Not an ideal game for Halasima. If you've got him, you probably, you could think about selling him in the next couple of weeks. I think the minutes are going to drop off for him a bit when they get back to full strength. So that's the thing I'd be concerned about there. Nia Corey moved to prop this week. He'll probably be back in the back row rotation next week. Then Mariota, Strange, Tomoko, Afoa, down the list here. Malga, only 17 minutes for him, which is kind of surprising considering they were missing both their starting props. But hey, that's a rough one. Alilea Tower, really quiet one for him. If they had better buys, I'd be eyeing him off. But just the buy schedule isn't great for the Warriors. And then, Weeks, Paddy, Martin. Nothing really crazy to talk about here. Xavier Savage is really a funny one. So we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. Didn't really push him too hard last week. But a couple of weeks ago when he was at that 274K price point, I was sort of waiting for him to get to 250. Comes out and scores a 74-point game. Then he has this 10-point game. So this is the volatility you can get with Ethan Strange, Xavier Savage there. And, if you have Xavier Savage, you just got to cop those, right? He's a bit of a loophole option. Now, going through Roosters and Sharks, and this is one of the many games where the favorite team just didn't turn up. And the Sharks are big favorites in this game. The Roosters are missing a lot of guys. As we go through this list, you're going to see some names here that aren't normally in this Roosters starting 13. So the Chooks won 42-16. Blake Steep, big part of it. Talked about Steep on the pod earlier, just as a guy who's got fantastic PPM. So he's a historical 32 points in 32 minutes guy before this game. Scored a 68 in 53 minutes. That included a line break try assist, which definitely boosted the score. But he's a machine, right? If Blake Steep ever gets the big minutes consistently, he'll be a must-have. The issue is that he's getting too expensive to buy at that point. But I'm a big Blake Steep fan. Issue is it's too late to jump on. If for some reason you needed an edge at round 15, we could think about it then, but the price is going to be pretty high at that point. Kale Iro, there was a few petitions this week on me to start including tries in Kale Iro's base stats because he just keeps scoring tries. And I'm starting to think about it, right? So 60 points here, had a try assist, 2 line breaks, had 6 tackle breaks as well. The offload, forced turnover, and nearly 200 meters run. So for Kale Iro, if you've got him, you're pretty happy with it. Look, amongst the big dog centers though this week, Herbie Farmworth has a 55, so right there with him. And then Dylan Lucas popped off for 80 plus points. But if you got Iro, you're not upset about that score. Victor Radley, he was one of the ones that we were talking about alongside Morgan Smithies there as great options for that middle forward or edge back row spot. Rad's got 59 points this week. It includes a try assist, a line break, 5 tackle breaks, which is a bit out of the ordinary for him. But regardless, you take the 34 tackles, you take the 200 meters run, and 4 penalties I just saw there. So he racks up a few negatives. But Victor Radley, you take that to the house, right? And you're stoked with that 60 points from a guy who you're using in the buy rounds there. Hugo Savala, big attacking day from him. So he had a couple of nice chip kicks for Dan Tupou this week. Tupou just dominated Moini Hiroti. So Hiroti just, couldn't stand up to Tupou. Savar grabbed 2 try assists off those little chip kicks out. Grabbed a try as well, running support. Beautiful, beautiful flick pass from Tedesco, who was heading over the sideline. So for Savala, bit of an attacking day for him. The thing is, though, about 20 minutes into this game, he had about 28 points, including the 2 try assists, and he continued on with it. So he didn't have those big attacking plays after those. And well, what is this? Like another 25 points in the remaining sort of section of the game. So he kept chugging along. He had his run meters, kick meters, good defensive work rate, and got himself to a solid score here of 53, which you're not balking at, right? Like you would have been happy having that in your starting 13. Cam McInnes grabbed a try. 52 points with a try is not ideal if you're a McInnes owner. Like you would have liked a bit more than 35 tackles, 76 meters run, only 51 minutes as well. So I think this one's a bit of a tough one to swallow if you're a McInnes owner. But you roll with it. Like you can take the 50 and just sort of keep on moving. James Tedesco, 50 as well. Grabbed that try right at the end, which bumped up the score a bit. And I will say, I was wrong about the Roosters. I was wrong about them. I thought the Sharks had come up and sort of rock up in this game as though they were a potential premiership contender with a full strength side up against a team who's missing half their starting forward pack. But apparently Cronulla missed that memo. And Teddy was a big beneficiary here. So grabbed the try, had a try assist, 5 tackle breaks, 200 meters run. Tedesco just keeps doing his Tedesco things. And if you want to wing fullback this week, he's not a bad shout. But now that we're past round 12, you could also go for Campbell, Drinkwater, these types of guys too, who I'm probably leaning more towards myself. Then Dom Young came back, very solid. Noini Tuase grabbed that try assist at the end, which definitely boosted the score, but had a try in there as well and just absolutely killed it in that spot. 50 points here. Sil Wong, solid for him, 80 minutes. You love that. Nico Hines with a 45, including a try assist. It has been a frustrating own, Nico Hines, I will say. I've had him for a while now, and this is my first under 50 score, but he hasn't really been going over 60 either. So he's just sort of been plodding along. It's another game with no tackle breaks, with one offload to ground. I don't know. It's just like there's something missing there for Nico Hines. Like that sort of physical play that he sort of used to play with just isn't there right now. And I don't know if there's an injury he's carrying or he's trying not to get injured or whatever it is there. There's been a few times where he sort of had those half breaks, made those breaks, made those busts, and just sort of looked to take the tackle a bit or looked to pass more than he used to, which I think is really hurting his scores. The outside of that is, 100 meters run is good, but 119 kick meters, he's really deferring to Trindle as that dominant kicker. So that's less kick meters than Sandon Smith, for example, in this game. So for Hines, if you got him, you ride the wave, but you're not happy about it. I'm getting a bit frustrated with this one. Then Dan Tupou, 44. Adam Fanua-Blake, the 42 is not good, but the minutes and the involvement is okay. So 60 odd minutes in this game. I like that. I like nearly 200 meters run. Just no offloads in this game, no attacking plays. And it was a bit of a stop-start sort of game, a lot of points scored. So a lot of standing behind the post in this one where, Fanua-Blake just didn't get into a flow. So I can live with that. If Fanua-Blake's role is 60 odd minutes, he will be absolutely fine as a scorer. And this is just a random lower game. As long as he has those big games like last week with 80 points, you can live with it. Brayley, 40, solid. Solid without being spectacular. Egan Butcher, Kafusi, Docker Clay. So if you bought Docker Clay, he went back to the bench, played 46 minutes in this game, scored a 36 on the back of 32 tackles and 1 forced turnover. That was his whole stat line there. Docker Clay, if he plays 80, is very good, but 46 minutes. I mean, you take the 36, but you're not super stoked about it. Sandon Smith grabbed the 7 goals there, but outside of that, pretty quiet game from him too, 35 points. Lasalu, solid. Burns, Talakai played a few more minutes as well. Ramian, really quiet. Down the list, I mean, Nakora. Man, if you got a Nakora, you got that 28-point game. And it's a tough one because you probably bought him thinking, oh, yeah, Cronulla's going to win this one well. And they just didn't turn up. So with Nakora, you got yourself, 34 tackles, like good work rate there. Nakora rocks up every week, right? Like he's playing, but it's a tough one. Like Cronulla's attack didn't come together there, and it came together against the Storm last week. So it's a very hard one to predict. But 7 missed tackles here for him is a real knock on the score sheet there, as well as 1 error and 1 penalty too. So you cop that low score. If you've got him, you probably stick with him for round 15. But you're hoping for a real bounce back soon. Then Trindle down the list, Colhoun. We got Mulatalo, who probably faces a week on the sidelines. Hamanuele, Smith, Herodi, yeah, down the list. Like Fiketti, I thought Fiketti looked good, by the way. The bits of the game I watched live, and then I watched the replay later, I thought Fiketti looked strong. And, 21 points in 42 minutes is not anything to write home about for fantasy, but I think he earned himself, a few more minutes going forward whenever he does get into the side. Then Kennedy, really quiet one, 13 points for Kennedy. I feel like every month or so he has a big game. I get a bunch of DMs asking about Will Kennedy. And then he scores a game like this, and you sort of see why you shouldn't. Now, down the list here, let's go through to the Panthers and Knights. And the Knights just dusted the Panthers up. This scoreline is flattering, by the way. So Fletcher Sharp, 98 points for him. You've got the 4 line breaks here, only 1 try. Now, he got held up a couple of times there, nearly had a few tries. Fletcher Sharp could have been on 150 in this game. Like, there's a few plays that nearly went his way where he could have just gone absolutely enormous. Now, I'll give you the stat line here as it is, but just know that, like Jenkins, that try saver on Sharp from Jenkins was unbelievable. Now, Sharp, 1 try saver, 4 line breaks, 6 tackles. You got 15 tackle breaks. That's 30 points there. 1 forced turnover, 272 meters run, and 2 kicks diffused. Not a single negative stat. Just a flawless performance. Now, a few things that we got to bring up here. The first one is, Newcastle, a lot of chat about Kalen Ponga and his position in the team going forward. Their attack has really struggled this year. Do they get desperate here and start to think about, hey, you know what? Fletcher Sharp, he was damn good in that fullback role. Let's keep him there. Right? He's been playing good at 6, but he ignited their attack at fullback. It was very good. So I think that might be a conversation that comes up going forward. The issue is they're going to struggle to sort of find a spine configuration that makes sense, right? So if they do that, they're going to have to move Ponga back into the halves. And we saw Dylan Lucas dominate in this game. It was mainly Lucas, but I will say, if you go back and watch the replay, Tyson Gamble was throwing him a lot of those simple short balls, just feeding him a lot of early ball, giving him one-on-one matchups, and Lucas was winning them every time, right? Especially against Schneider in this game. So you probably want to have Gamble there, or maybe you play Ponga in that role instead. I don't know if swapping Ponga and Sharp really achieves anything, though. I just think Newcastle might be a bit desperate, so they might think about something like that. The other thing is, where do they play Sharp next year? So they're bringing Dylan Brown in next year. They might bring Dylan Brown in early, potentially, if something can be worked out. Does Dylan Brown and Fletcher Sharp make sense as a halves pairing, right? Or do they start thinking for the future and think, you know what, let's try and play Sharp at fullback. Let's figure something out with Ponga, and let's bring Brown in to the halfback spot, maybe. Like it's a tough one, right? So just as a Sharp owner, just be aware of all these sort of dynamics. But what he proved here at the fullback spot is he can score anywhere. So we're just going to keep him in our sides. 58.5 average. Nothing to read into too much in terms of fantasy production. But Fletcher Sharp, what a freak! Like, some of these plays were unbelievable, and he just runs with such intensity. It's something that Newcastle haven't had at fullback, all of this year. Ponga was doing it last year. Haven't seen it this year. Fletcher Sharp brought it back. Maybe it wakes Ponga up. Maybe when he comes back and he sees that and he goes, you know what? I really got to earn this spot, and rocks up. But I don't know. Good things happen around Sharp, right? And then Dylan Lucas here, you got the 3 tries there. Nearly had the 4th try as well. Just dropped that ball. Got a bit overexcited, I think. For him, 3 tries, 3 line breaks, 10 tackle breaks, 200 meters run. You actually had a pretty heavy sort of negative stat group here as well. So only 23 tackles, which is quite low for him. 6 missed tackles, which is minus 12 points there. The error and the penalty too. So could have been a higher score from Lucas, but he sort of went quiet towards the end. I think he is dealing with a few of those injuries that we talked about. But hey, if you can score 3 tries, it doesn't really matter how you finish the game, because you're going to get that 84 fantasy points. Lindsay Smith, 70 minutes, 60 points. Like clockwork. If he plays that big role, he's going to score a bunch of points. Gagai, big one here. Goal kicked, 58 points. 8 tackle breaks for Gagai is probably the story there. That's old Gagai right there. That's OG Gagai. The Gagai we used to see. The guy used to be the top averaging center in fantasy. I don't expect it to come back. But, hey, if you were desperate and you wanted a center, you could do worse than Gagai. Then Schneider, solid fantasy day. Got really beat up by Lucas a few times, but I will say with the ball in hand, he was effective. Frizzell, again, 53 and 51, big PPM there. Obviously, Leo Thompson and Jacob Safidi both out in this game. So you factor that in and you sort of write off this role for Frizzell, really. Then Leota, solid. Kai Pearce-Paul, the 50 there. It was a sort of a middling game. Like he had his tackles there, 38 tackles at the 167 run meters. Just, 5 missed tackles is not ideal. Only 1 tackle break, no offloads. So it's pretty base heavy performance from Pearce-Paul. Did have a line break there, which definitely helped him out a bit. Then Crossland, Cogger, Gamble. Gamble, 3 try assists. That's what I was talking about, right? Like he was feeding Dylan Lucas a lot of ball. Looked all right on that left edge, Gamble. I will shout it out. And if they bring Bradman Best back onto that edge as well, the way Gamble was playing, I mean, I don't know how much to read into because Penrith were really under strength in this game. But the way Gamble was feeding the ball out, he was getting a lot out of Lucas. And I imagine that would work with Bradman Best as well. So they might look at that in future weeks potentially. Then Schiller, Kenny, Croker's there. Harrison Hassett, he's a guy who's got a lot of hype. A lot of hype on this dude. Now, comes in, scores a try on debut, 42 points in 31 minutes, 26 tackles, 45 minutes run. He's got serious hype. So if Harrison Hassett can nab a role long term, very interesting, but I think it's quite unlikely. Then Liam Henry, 40 points, got sin bin in this game, got, less minutes as a result of that. Without the sin bin, you're looking at, a 50 plus game. So if you got on Liam Henry, it's a tough one because you were kind of right. Like he did absolutely punch out some points, but he's probably going to be out for 2 weeks now. You're going to miss the next 2 weeks. He'll not play round 15 as well. So it'll be 13, 14, 15. He'll be playing 16. Probably can't hold for that, but you could because 16, none of the Origin players will back up. Then McLean can't, Dane Laurie. Laurie had a few tough moments in defense, but pretty solid game for fantasy. Jenkins, 2 try savers. One of them was a cracker on Sharp. I wish he didn't make it, but hey, he got it. 36 points. You can live with that with no attacking stats. Then Patea, Eisenhuth, Jones, McCarthy, Jaden Braley played a few more minutes. Isaac Tungo in the back row, 28 points at 30 tackles. So a bit of a rough day for him. Elliott, Brian, Summerton, Blaze Talangi, 6 missed tackles, 2 errors there. Really knocked his score down, the 19 points. For Blaze, again, just one where, he had a tough day, right? Like he was looking up. Every time he looked up, he had a big Dylan Lucas running at him. So, tough assignment for him. Now, Parramatta and the Sea Eagles. I was at this game live, and Parramatta got it done, absolutely dusted them. 30-10 after last week, which was 28-4 against Newcastle. So you could say that Parramatta is starting to turn the corner a bit. I still can't really figure out what it was here. Now, with this game, Manly felt like Manly had nothing in this game. Like their attack was just totally rudderless and totally impotent. And that's not Manly, right? That's not the Manly I know, and I'm not going to say know and love, but know and enjoy watching. They just felt like they had nothing. They had a few, classy tries, but in general, they weren't throwing much at Parramatta. We didn't see much of Olakawatu. We didn't see Garrett get the ball really at all. Turbo wasn't running the ball much. Brooks was frozen out of the game. It felt kind of strange. So I'm just trying to figure out whether we attribute that to Parramatta's defense improving because they did basically shut out Newcastle last week, or do we attribute that to Manly being without Trey Evans, without Gerbo, without Paseka, a bunch of these guys like Ben Trbojevic wasn't there. Maybe we put it on that. But now look at Parramatta without Moses, Lomax, Panasini knocked out at the start of the game. Simonson wasn't there. So it's a hard one to read into. So I'm going to be watching closely, but Manly are in a bit of a hole at the moment in terms of their attack. And even games they've won recently, the attack has been a bit dodgy. So as someone who owns a couple of Manly players, I'm hoping they can kind of turn it around. But for fantasy scores here, we got Hawkins first, 4 try assists, had a big day out, 640 kick meters, 67 points. He's not going to play that many games in this role. But if he gets a spot back at some point, you could have a think about it. He hasn't been this sort of guy before in terms of fantasy production, but hey, at that price, you could roll the dice if you ever did get the role long term. Jazz Tavanga, 65, got 80 minutes here. You love to see it. 50 tackles, 1 tackle break, 5 missed tackles is a few too many, but 3 offloads helps. 135 meters run and 35 kick meters. Love to see it. So Big Jazz, he kills it when Gerbo's out. But Jake Trbojevic is not in the Origin side as of today, so that could be one that sort of comes to an end pretty quickly. As a Jazz owner, I'm going to keep riding the wave as long as I can. But as someone who did, if you didn't have him, I still don't think you should have bought him this week. But if you did do it, you got the score. Congrats to you. Jay, I know you did it, for example. But it's a risky one. Then Yongi, 64 points. You can live with that. 264 run meters there. The try assist, line break. Some tackle breaks there as well. Very solid game from him. He looked dynamic in this one. Jake Simpkin, bunch of defense for him. 61 points. Jermaine Hopgood grabbed a try in this game. Look, the try was an 8-pointer, right? So really, this is a 50 points in 50 minutes kind of game for him. 41 tackles. He had 2 tackle breaks, 72 meters run. I know that's it's a tough stat line to read into, right? Because it really is made up of the 41 tackles. Now, for mine, not good enough for me to be jumping on Jermaine Hopgood, especially since Parramatta don't play the remaining 2 major bye rounds. But if I see a trend forming, I might look at Hopgood in like round 16, just as a cut price keeper. But I need to see those minutes sort of moving up towards 60. That's kind of what I'm looking for there with Hopgood. Jack Williams, solid game, grabbed a try in this one, 57 points. Leo Hopewadi grabbed both their tries for Manly, got himself 57 with 2 tries. Kat Tonga keeps on pumping, man. Had that line break, 34 tackles, 2 tackle breaks, an offload, 188 meters run. He's getting a lot more ball, and he is just pumping. So if you have Kat Tonga, keep him as long as you can. Matty Lodge, 54 points in 36 minutes. That's a very interesting stat line there, and one that we probably shouldn't ignore as a middle forward. So look, it's a tough one to read into again because they have some middle forwards coming back, Manly, in the near future. So Lodge might drop out of contention, but just keep an eye on this. Round 15, we might be looking at Lodge. Riley Smith grabbed a 53 with 55 tackles, so very solid from him. Waddell stepped in for Burbo, scored a 52. Junior Paulo, look, in his Junior Barlow in his 250th game. Look at the 50 points there. In his 250th game, he got 50 points, 63 minutes. Good game from him. 28 tackles, 200 meters run. Nothing too flashy here. He's pumping, but he's a bit expensive now, so you're not going to be jumping on. Jordan Samrani, man, this guy can ball. 47 points here. Had the try, 6 tackle breaks, 160 run meters. The one offload there. It's an interesting one because he plays in different spots, right? He can fill in the back line there, which, he might keep a spot in the back line after that game. But he also plays off the bench in the back row. Now, Samrani is a guy that, man, I would have loved to have gotten him earlier in the year. See, he's only center eligible. That's the thing. I looked at him, and I mentioned this before, but I looked at him a while back, and if he was center wing fullback, I might have done it just as a paraman. But there's just been no clear role. That's the thing. So it's very hard to jump on a guy like Samrani. Now he's a bit too expensive. Tom Trebojevic, interesting game from him. Had the 3 offloads late that kind of saved his score. It was looking pretty dire for a while there. 225 run meters, did a lot of work in this game, but only 1 tackle break, no attacking stats. I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether to take this one as a major L or a bit of a W. I jumped on Turbo, by the way. So I got on Turbo, put him in the loophole spot. He scored the 40, which is good enough to take that score. Look, I got him as like he covers all 3 major bye rounds. He won't be in my starting 17 most weeks, but he's got upside, and I can loophole him most weeks. So that's kind of how I'm playing Turbo. That 40 is okay. If you don't have Turbo, you could keep watching and, maybe get on round 15 if you do need a wing fullback for round 15 and round 18. So keep an eye on him. I think he will turn around at some point, but this probably wasn't really the start of it. Tolukola down the list, Brown, Moretti, Josh Papali'i. Josh Papali'i is 230K, came on a minute in, played mostly wing, bit of center there as well. Pretty good day for him. Look, he's not going to be a fantasy machine, right? So 8 tackles, 1 tackle break, 76 meters run. Those base stats aren't there, but he had the try assist, the try, the try saver, plenty of attacking stats, and just looks like a guy who can play some footy. So at some point he might come in to Parramatta as a 5'8" or, as a fullback if Iongi was out. But yeah, he's a guy who's in Parramatta's plans and maybe gets a wing spot. Just the stat line there isn't enough for me to say, hey, you got to take a gamble on this guy. So he's probably not going to be one that I target personally. Jake Arthur, went out for the HIA, was the dominant playmaker here, 37 points. Sean Russell, Reuben Garrick. Oh, man, Reuben Garrick. Okay, I got on Reuben Garrick this week as well. I tip Parramatta with my heart more than anything, really. But but I thought Manly would find some attack in this game. I thought it might be a bit of a shootout. I thought Parra would score some points. I thought Manly would keep up a bit as well. and they just had nothing. Nothing went Garrick's way. Like, he got fed no ball at all. 84 meters run. It was all just work rate meters there. Two tackle breaks. He made the 28 tackles, which kept his score up. Only one goal kick, 34 points. Look, this is a game where Manly got completely shut out and clamped up, and Garrick scored 34. That's about his base. You cop it, you move on, is my answer there. He plays all three major bye rounds, so he can make it up to us in round 15 or round 18, is what I'm going to think about there. Dylan Walker, good game from him, quite fantasy. Bullimore, Madison, Olakawatu. If you got an Olakawatu, you're not happy with this. Two tackle breaks there, 140 meters run, 20 tackles. Yeah, 30 points. Meh. Takiaho, sub. Brooks. Brooks, yeah. We talked about Brooks as a bit of a fun pod. He was not the one we recommended. We recommended Burton if you were going around that price point. But yeah, I thought he might do a bit more here. And what we've seen in the past is when Trey Evans has been out, Brooks has been the dominant kicker. What we saw in this game was Jake Arthur was the dominant kicker there. And Luke Brooks played I can't even describe what the role was. I didn't really see him much. But, 52 meters run, no attacking plays really there. Didn't work for Manly, so I think next couple of buys he might step into a more major playmaking role. Then Kelmator Lungi, quiet one. Dylan Brown, really quiet here. 40 run meters here, 80 kick meters, 15 tackles, nothing else. I mean, he'll be cheap when he goes to Newcastle next year, so you can have a look at him then. Then Croker, Adokar, Quiet, Navale, and Will Penasini got the one-pointer. Penasini's going to be really cheap. I keep saying it, but that one-pointer is really going to knock his price down. He'll be back pretty soon as well. And then Doggies and the Dolphins, last game here, before we go into sort of an overall. So for the Dogs, Josh Curran, 78 points. And you really couldn't go wrong this week with a lot of the guys that were in that sort of 500, 600K price point. So we talked a lot about Smithies. Talked about Radley. I wasn't as keen on Curran over a longer period because I personally think that the Dogs just have too many guys coming back. So when they get back to full strength, you add Max King, you add Tilly Tupinoa, you add, Jamin Salmon's still a while away, but you add him in as well. Sam Hughes is getting back up to speed. You got Jacob Preston coming back, which pushes Curran back into the middle forward rotation. It's a tough one to sort of forecast good minutes for Curran. So I think Curran will sort of fade back, but I will say this game, 60 tackles, 3 tackle breaks, 1 offload, 1 forced turnover, 100 meters run. Man, he made a lot of tackles. And if you forgot the game already, it was a wet weather day. A lot went his way, like in terms of the attack of the Dolphins, and he was just a tackle machine. So if Curran gets an 80-minute role ever, he will be an elite fantasy option. He's an absolute machine. I just worry about the minutes there. Like when he's in the prop rotation, it sort of seems to drop back a bit. But hey, if Max King keeps his origin spot, which if the Blues go up and win, he will, and Curran keeps these minutes up, then you've got yourself a winner there. Harry Hayes, look, 67 points here. He hasn't really been this sort of PPM guy before, but similar to Curran, 49 tackles there, 0 misses is crazy. So just a bunch of defensive work for Harrison Hayes. Herbie Farmworth grabbed a try there, had a try assist as well. 55 tackles, 6 tackle breaks, 113 meters run. He was 50-50 to play this game. Apparently he was in hospital the day before. I had no idea. No one had any idea about that. It just did not come out at all that he was under a cloud. But hey, you take the 55 points and you live with it. Isaiah Katoa with the 55 as well. For him, a bit of a lower run meter count. Just a wet weather game. Didn't really play into his hands. He normally runs the ball a bit more when it's a bit drier. Then Kurt Donahue, big game for him. Look, Donahue, he had a good fantasy day. Individually had a good day. I sort of felt as a Herbie Farmworth owner that he sort of kept the ball a bit tight. I guess it was wet weather, so maybe that was a strategy there. But there's a lot of times where he sort of looked to the left and then passed to the right. So as a Herbie owner, I was frustrated, but good on him. He had a good day out. I think he had a broken nose in that game as well. So he's a tough little bugger getting through that. Jermaine Asako, one of the pods we talked about at 50. Look, he got to try 8 goals here as well. Look, Asako can get hot at the right time. I'm not going to do victory laps on a 50 though. Like that's okay without being special. Then Francis Molo, Matt Burton. I didn't get on Matt Burton in the end, but those of you who did, I would say be encouraged by this performance. So he's still goal kicking, 72 meters run in the wet, did most of the general play kicking here. Had a HIA, so missed some minutes there. If he played out the game and didn't have the HIA, he was on fire at the start of the game. Would have gotten to you to about a 55 instead. And with a 55 there at 550K, You're laughing. You're laughing. So you've nailed it with Burton. He's a good acquisition. Interesting to see if Galvin pops up at the Dogs ASAP, and if he steps into the halves with Burton, or if Burton goes back to fullback, and kind of Tracy is cut from the team entirely. Kind of Tracy maybe goes to the wing. Like you don't know what's going to happen here, but if you're a Burton owner, you just kind of got to ride the wave. I personally think that Galvin rocking up is probably bad news for Burton, regardless of what position he plays, because Galvin is a bit more of a dominant playmaker and a guy that they're bringing in to be the guy, really. Lemuelu, solid game from him. Harrison Graham, again, stepped up. Marshall King should be back pretty soon, I would expect. So these guys will fade away for the Dolphins. Then Kikau, 43 points. Finfuyaki, Kerr, Finai, Keely, Reed Marnie got the 36, got a rest, didn't play the full 80 minutes. We were sort of right, sort of wrong. So Turpin came on and played lock next to Reed, but then they just gave a Reed a rest at the end anyway. So he ended up not playing the full 80 minutes. Look, few too many errors, missed tackles there. So 3 errors, 2 missed tackles. One of those was a forward pass that was nearly a try assist. So that would have been a big boost to Reed's scoring. Then Ray Stone, Hopoi. Hopoi grabbed the try as Bergs predicted. 35 points in 35 minutes. You can live with that. Mark Nichols, 33. Sexton, Avarillo, Kafusi, Turpin, Bostock. Turpin grabbed that, nearly grabbed that try as well in this game, actually. That was a crash ball off Reed Marnie. Then Taft Smith, look down the bottom here. Hayward really quiet. Bronson Zeri very quiet. Tracy Montoya, Sam Hughes came back, played 17 minutes. So for the Dogs there, it really was the Curran and Hayes show here. But look, that's the recap done and dusted for you guys. Now, just quickly, you might have seen a little bit of movement in your score there and different scores sort of displaying. I think there was an error with the fantasy app where it was counting all your bench players there into your starting score. So if you had extra players, they were counting in. It was just calculating it wrong. It seems to be correct now. I think 7041 is correct for me. That rank, bit of a drop back to 1298 there for me. Just a rough one. A few plotty performances here. Garrick, Tamale, like Hines, Hosking, Horsburgh with his sin bin. Fanil, I had a few plotters come in, but Lucas will loop into my team. Turbo Sharp, so we'll be sweet there. Hopefully you went all right too. For next week, just keep in mind there's a few players on bye. So you've got a few teams who are very useful this week, particularly like the Dolphins, the Sharks, a couple of others there that you're going to have to keep an eye out for. Origin players backing up as well. I would generally not expect Payne Haas to play this week. So go into next week with the mentality that you might have to make a few moves to cover a full 13. It is only the starting 13 though. You don't have to worry about your bench. So very simple round. It's rounds 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, 19. Return to that starting 13. Good luck this week, guys. I'll see you on Buy, Hold, Sell and our Teamless Tuesday live at 4 p.m. See you there.